everybody, and thank you so much for the warm welcome, and thanks for the introduction as well, Cal. It's so lovely to be here. So first of all, I thought I'd let you know just a little bit about me. So I'm Rachel, and I love teaching mindfulness and meditation to people all around the world. I studied a Bachelor of Psychological Science at uni, and then did a coaching and counselling certification as well, and got some further qualifications in guiding and teaching meditation. So I also started my podcast, The Mindful Kind, back in 2015, and that has been a weekly creation. So I've covered a lot of different topics about mental health and mindfulness and well-being in general. So there's 300 plus episodes that you can go back and dive into. They're just nice and short, about 10 minutes long each. So that's been something I've been doing for a really long time. But I love these opportunities to come in and chat with people, especially via webinars. So I wanted to say thank you again to Outdoors Inc. for having me today. And just to let you know as well, so Outdoors Inc. is a not-for-profit organisation who run programs for Victorians living with mental health conditions. So they do lots of fun things like surfing and hiking and bush art, and it's a really amazing way to make social connections as well. So definitely, if you or someone that you know might be interested in that, please do check them out. I'm sure Cal will give you a bit of a rundown at the end of the session as well, so you can find out some more. So first of all, I thought that I would explain a little bit about what mindfulness is, and also some examples of how you can use it in your own life, and a couple of the benefits that can happen from practicing mindfulness as well. So mindfulness is the practice of bringing your attention into the present moment in a non-judgmental and curious way. And it has roots in Buddhist traditions. It's been around for thousands of years. But it was really brought into Western society by Jon Kabat-Zinn, who has taught a lot of different, very practical mindfulness techniques that have really helped people manage stress and experience a range of different benefits. But I find that sometimes it's easier to explain what mindfulness is by giving you a little bit of an example. So I thought I would explain mindful walking and how that's different just from your regular everyday walking. So let's just imagine that I'm going for a bit of a walk and I'm not being mindful this time. So maybe I'm thinking about the work project that I've got due next week, and I'm planning out my to-do list and thinking about everything that I have to do and feeling a bit worried, feeling a bit nervous. And then all of a sudden I think, oh gosh, like remember that mistake that I made? I was driving in my car last week and I forgot to indicate and someone beeped their horn at me. You know, and now I'm worried about that. Now I'm ruminating about that. I'm feeling stressed and anxious and a bit overwhelmed. So I'm going along on this walk, but I'm not really present. I'm thinking about the future. I'm thinking about the past, and I'm perpetuating these feelings of stress and anxiety. So now let's take a look at how this could be done in a more mindful way. So I've gone for this walk, I'm walking along. I'm really lucky to live quite close to a river, so I can actually hear the river as I'm walking. And I'm noticing there's little birds like popping in and out of my vision, and they're kind of hopping along the road next to me, and I can feel the sunshine on my skin. And as I'm walking, I notice the feeling of the ground underneath my feet. Maybe my breathing starts to speed up a little bit as I walk, as I exercise. So I can feel that change. I can feel my body drawing in more air and fueling my body. So you can probably see the difference between being caught up in my mind and thinking about the future or the past versus being quite present and actually noticing the world around me and being a bit more engaged with my surroundings in this non-judgmental and quite curious way. So that's just a little example of what mindfulness can look like. I will give you a few more examples as we go throughout this workshop as well. So if it's still not fully clear yet, don't worry, because it will be by the end. I wanted to also touch on some of the benefits of mindfulness, because there's a lot of research that's come out, especially over the last couple of years, that has shown just how powerful mindfulness can actually be. And the reason why this is really important, in my opinion, is because mindfulness is so accessible for people. It's something that they can practice anytime, anywhere. It's free. You don't necessarily have to have any special tools or resources. Once you learn how to practice mindfulness, you really have access to it at any time. And this has come in handy so many times in my own life. So before I've done job interviews, I've kept myself a bit calmer by practicing mindfulness. I had surgery a couple of years ago and I had to wait in a waiting room all by myself. I was very stressed out. I could feel like my heart just absolutely racing in my chest. And I thought, this is a great opportunity to practice mindfulness. I don't have my phone. I don't have any distractions. I don't have anyone around me. So there's nothing else I can use. All I can really do is something like mindfulness. And I started practicing mindful breathing, which I will talk about in a little bit as well. So some of the benefits that can unfold when you practice mindfulness consistently, there are a lot of different things that can happen. First of all, it can be a really helpful way to manage stress, and I will also talk about that in a bit more depth later on. But it can also increase compassion, kindness, empathy. It can improve your attention and memory and different cognitive skills. In my own personal experience, practicing mindfulness has also had some really interesting knock-on effects. So, for example, I used to really struggle with sleep. I would take a long time to fall asleep at night because my mind was overthinking. I should probably let you know, I'm a little bit of an overthinker. I've been prone to stress and anxiety in my past, especially growing up. So for me, sleep was something that was a real struggle, and I would wake up multiple times during the night. I'd wake up early before my alarm went off and just be lying in bed, either ruminating or thinking about the day ahead and feeling this sense of anxiety and dread in my stomach. So when I first learned how to practice mindfulness, I began experimenting with it, and I started practicing mindfulness in those moments when I was lying in bed. And I actually noticed that it helped me feel a little bit more calm. It helped me come into the present moment, and I could feel my body resting in the bed, and it just gave me that, I guess, that reassurance that in this moment I'm safe. I'm safe in my bed. There's nothing actually happening right now. I've got my nice warm doona. It's a nice cozy space. So for me, that created this wonderful sense of calmness and helped me start falling asleep a lot easier. I slept better during the night, and I wasn't waking up as early before my alarm went off. So for me, this kind of knock-on effect of being able to cultivate a calmer experience for me resulted in better sleep. And then when you're getting better sleep, there are all these even more knock-on effects. So you've got more energy, you might be a bit less irritable, so your relationships can improve, you can focus better, so maybe your work is a bit more productive. So there are lots of different ways that practicing mindfulness can either directly or indirectly create these wonderful benefits in your life. But it will sometimes take consistent practice. Although in saying that, there have been studies as well that have come out showing that after just 10 minutes of practicing mindfulness, there has been an increase in attention and problem solving. So it's really cool. You don't actually have to practice for a really long time to get some kind of result. So I thought I would also talk a little bit as well about the difference between mindfulness and meditation, because this is a question that does often tend to come up quite a lot. So meditation is kind of the umbrella term. So let's imagine meditation is here at the top. Mindfulness is a branch. So you've got one little branch here, there's mindfulness, another branch here, maybe that's visualization, another branch here, that's controlled breathing or relaxation breathing techniques. So meditation is kind of the overarching umbrella term for these different types of meditation techniques, and mindfulness is one of those techniques. So I know that I mentioned earlier about mindful breathing, and I thought that I would just guide you through just a quick short practice so you can actually see what this can feel like. And I will be doing a guided mindfulness practice a little bit later on as well. So you're welcome to just make yourself nice and comfortable wherever you're sitting, and you're welcome to close your eyes down, but you don't have to. You can just kind of keep a soft gaze in front of you. And now just starting to notice as your breath is moving in and out of your body. So you might feel your chest start to rise as you inhale. You might feel your diaphragm expanding. And as you exhale, you might notice your chest just falls back down to its natural place. You might even feel a slight coolness in your nostrils as you breathe in, and a bit of warmth in your nostrils as you breathe out. And you don't need to change your breathing pattern, just let your breath flow nice and naturally. all you're doing is just paying attention to it. So breathing in and just observing that journey of your breath as it moves into your body. And breathing out and observing that journey back out again. So it's a very simple practice. Don't worry if your mind wanders. Just noticing your breath in this moment. Noticing the changes that it creates in your body. Just 1 or 2 more breaths like that. Beautiful. Now, if your eyes are closed, you're welcome to slowly blink them open and just readjust back to the light around you. Otherwise, you might even just like to take 1 deep breath. You might have noticed that maybe your breathing patterns slow down a little bit naturally as you're practicing this mindful breathing technique. Now, the purpose of practicing mindfulness isn't necessarily to calm down or to slow down your breathing. The purpose is really just to pay attention. But sometimes naturally, when we do start paying that attention, it slows down naturally of its own accord. So that can be a really helpful breathing technique, a mindful breathing technique that you can use in a variety of different situations, whether, like I mentioned earlier, whether you're going for a job interview, if you're a bit nervous before going in for a surgery, or if you've had a conflict with a loved one and you just need a couple of moments to kind of refocus and soothe that stress response a little bit. It's a really handy practice just to have. And there are a couple of different ways that you can do that as well. So you can simply notice the breath as it moves in and out of your body. Another really nice way to do this is actually to place one hand over the center of your chest and just feel the breath as it moves in and out of your body. So you will actually feel your chest rising and feel your chest falling. Another reason why this practice is actually really lovely is because it incorporates self-soothing touch, which is a wonderful self-compassion technique. I won't be going to self-compassion in this webinar, but if you are interested in learning more about it, I highly recommend the website by Kristen Neff. So she's done a lot of research into self-compassion and she has a lot of wonderful resources on that particular topic. But I do really like that breathing technique for something that's nice and simple and easy to practice in times whenever you might need it. Okay, so that is kind of mindfulness in a bit of a nutshell and some of the benefits that you can experience. If you do have any questions about mindfulness and what it is or how to practice it, feel free to pop those in the chat and I will be coming back to all of those questions later. I can't actually see them at the moment, but we will get to them later on. Now, I also wanted to dive into mindfulness and stress management a little bit because this is something that I think can have a really profound impact on people's lives. So the first thing to know about stress is that it isn't inherently a bad thing. We all need stress. So stress is something that was designed a long time ago to help keep us safe. For example, if we were, imagine we're a cave person and we're out walking through the bush and we hear a noise and we feel that stress response kick in. So our body becomes primed to either fight or flee. We have a range of physiological changes in our bodies that prepare us for that. So our muscles become nice and tight, all the blood starts flowing to them, our heart rate increases, we start to sweat. There's all these different things that are happening in response to hearing this noise, this potential threat. So now let's pretend that we find out that threat is actually a tiger. Not if you're in Australia, but let's just pretend, there's a tiger in the bush and we think, oh my gosh, okay, I am going to run away from this thing and escape it. The stress response has helped our bodies prepare for that so that we can run faster and potentially escape from this threat with success, hopefully. So in this situation, stress is a wonderful, potentially life-saving thing. But now let's just pretend that we hear, that little noise in the bush and we turn around and we realize it's our friend, it's our caveman friend who we've just, just give him a wave and we keep moving on. What happens is our stress response calms down. So it's there's another response in your body that kind of acts like the brakes for the stress response. So the brakes get turned on, our heart rate slows back down, the sweat glands stop producing sweat, our digestion goes back to normal. As soon as that threat has disappeared, we go back to our normal status quo. Now, the problem with modern day life is that we're exposed to stresses all the time, whether that's notifications on our phones from emails or comments on social media or text messages. Driving can be a stressful situation. Being out and about can be a stressful situation. We're just constantly being exposed to lots and lots of different stresses. And the other I guess, kind of problem with that is that our bodies don't get a chance to slow down as much. So we don't get to have that nice break response. We're constantly in this level of higher alert. Now, this can potentially be a chronic stress situation. And this is where the problems can start to come in terms of your physical well-being. So this is where we can see things like high blood pressure and tension headaches and things like that. So it's really important that we learn how to manage stress, because we don't want to be having that chronic stress experience that can lead to these further health problems down the line. So what I like to think about is that mindfulness can help us navigate stress. So the goal here isn't to eliminate stress. We're all going to feel stressed, and that's a completely natural thing, especially when we are exposed to stress triggers. But one of the things that can be really helpful is practicing mindfulness, because it does help us kind of navigate through stressful experiences and consciously choose to put those brakes back on to slow down that stress response. So in terms of practicing mindfulness, like I mentioned earlier, that mindful breathing technique is a really simple one that you can use pretty much any time. I'm going to guide you through another mindfulness technique in a little bit as well. And then I'm going to dive into some actual mindful living strategies that you can start to implement on a daily basis if you would like to help you start getting that consistent mindfulness practice. But don't worry, because it's not going to take a really long time, and you don't have to do formal meditations every single day to get these kinds of results. I'm going to give you some really practical ways that aren't necessarily going to take that much more time in your life. But coming back to why mindfulness is actually really important for managing stress. So there's some research that's come out that's actually shown there's a part of your brain called the amygdala, which is heavily involved in your stress response. So it's kind of your it's kind of like your little alert system. So it recognizes that there's some kind of threat. It goes, yep, okay, there's a threat, and it creates this cascade of changes in your body that is the stress response. So when that happens, the more and more that it happens, the more reactive that amygdala can become to stress. And the great thing about mindfulness is that research has shown that practicing mindfulness consistently can actually change the size of your amygdala, making it less reactive to stress. So this might actually mean feeling less stressed in stressful situations. It might mean preventing stress in some situations as well. But the other reason why mindfulness can be really helpful is because, again, it can act as that kind of brake system. So if you are feeling like you're going through a stressful situation, which we all do, it can be a really lovely way to help bring your body back down a little bit into a calmer and more clear state. So just to give you a bit of an example, I guess, one of the things that can happen if I'm having, say, an argument with a loved one, you'll feel that stress response kick in, right? Like you get that racing heart, your stomach becomes all tight, you might get red in the face, you might get a bit shaky. So let's imagine that you've had a conflict with a loved one, you're having that stress response and you feel really reactive. So you're going to slam the door, you're going to yell at this other person, and you're going to just basically not be feeling very good. Now, one of the things that you can do in that kind of situation is say, I just need a quick break from this conversation. Remove yourself if you can, go somewhere quiet. And if you can practice a mindful breathing technique or any other mindfulness technique that resonates with you, it's not going to change the conflict, but it's going to potentially change how you react to that conflict. So one of the things that mindfulness can do is it helps us step away from reactivity and gives us a chance to get a new perspective on something. So it can create this level of clear-mindedness that can be really helpful in these stressful situations. So you might be able to step back and say, okay, I'm just going to tune into how I'm feeling in this moment. I'm feeling really angry because my partner and I have had a conflict and he doesn't get my side of the story and doesn't understand. And that's upsetting and that's really tough. Can you see how I'm just observing how I'm feeling in this moment? I'm not saying he's a terrible person, or I'm going to slam this door and be passive aggressive, or whatever other mechanisms, which I myself used to do quite a bit. My kind of go-to was the silent treatment and being passive aggressive, which was not helpful in a lot of my relationships. So being able to step away from the situation, tap into how I'm actually feeling, get a bit more perspective, and react less to those quite intense feelings and thoughts, but just creating that little bit of space can be the difference between, potentially splitting up with this person, or going back and saying, I'm actually feeling really hurt right now because I can tell that we're not on the same page, and being able to have that conversation in a bit less of a reactive state. So I've digressed a little bit, but the main thing to remember here is that mindfulness can be a really wonderful tool in terms of managing stressful situations, and practicing mindfulness on a regular basis can also create these wonderful changes in your brain to help prevent stress from occurring in some situations as well. Okay, so we've covered a lot of information in a short amount of time. So I thought we'll just slow things down for a little bit and actually do a mindful senses technique. So this is a really fun and quite a simple technique, and it's a great one you can use whenever you would like to. So I'm going to guide you through it step by step. So the first thing that I'd like you to do is just find a nice comfortable position. You don't need to do anything special, but just make sure your body's kind of in a nice, relaxed, loose state, just so it's not too distracting. Just so you can kind of sense a little bit of relaxation for a couple of moments. Now, the first thing that I'd like you to do is tune into your sense of sight. So taking a look around the room around you, or if you're outside, taking a look around outside, and just starting to notice all the different colors, the different objects, the different shapes. You might notice light or shadows. So almost just exploring the world around you with your eyes, really tuning deeply into that sense of sight. And you might label objects. So you might see green plant or white wall or red bowl. As you look around, you might just be noticing these different things. And I'll just be quiet for a couple of moments so you can do this yourself. Wonderful. Now, for this next part of the practice, you're welcome to close down your eyes if you'd like to, or otherwise just keep a soft gaze in front of you. But starting to tune into your sense of sound. So really starting to notice any sounds in the immediate area around you, perhaps even your own breath, and then maybe sounds further away in the distance as well, maybe traffic or birds or anything else you can hear. And again, I'll be quiet so you can actually do this for a couple of moments. And as you do this as well, you don't need to force certain sounds, just let them come to you in their own time. So don't worry if you can't even particularly hear anything, just let that silence be there. Wonderful. Now starting to notice what you can feel in your body. So you might feel the ground underneath your feet. You might feel your back against a chair or a support. You might feel the pressure of your clothing against your skin. You might even feel areas of warmth or coolness. perhaps even areas of tension or discomfort. And if you can, try not to judge those as bad, but just simply observing them if you can. It is really difficult sometimes. Otherwise, you might even notice just a sense of rest and relaxation in your body. Perhaps you feel content in this moment. Wonderful. And now noticing if you can smell anything, any aromas in the room around you. Maybe there's a flower nearby, or maybe you can't even really smell anything at all. Maybe there's just a subtle nothingness. And last of all, just noticing your sense of taste. So you might have a taste of coffee or toothpaste, or maybe no real taste at all either. That's perfectly fine. Just noticing whatever's there. Wonderful. Now, if your eyes are closed, you're welcome to just take a couple of moments to slowly blink them open. There's no rush. It might feel nice to even take a nice deep breath or two. Well done, everybody. You've just completed a mindful senses exercise. So this is a really nice, simple one that you can do. There's a couple of different ways that you can do it. So I have just guided you through each one of your senses. So we went through sight, sound, sensation, smell, and taste. So you can really just explore each one of those senses in your own time for however long you would like to. Or you can also play this fun little senses game, which is noticing 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can feel in your body, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. So those are some great things that you can start to implement into your daily life. You can use them in a variety of different ways. If you're out and about for a walk, for example, you can play that senses game. You can tune into each one of those senses to help bring yourself into the present moment. Now, one thing that can happen quite a bit whenever we practice mindfulness or any other kind of meditation is that our minds can start to wander. And that is a very, very, very natural thing to have happen. So if you got 2 seconds into that mindfulness exercise and you notice that your mind was somewhere else completely, you were thinking about the things that you've got to do tomorrow, or the items you have to pick up from the supermarket later today, or whatever it might be, that's absolutely okay. That's totally normal. If you can, whenever you do notice that your mind has wandered into the past or into the future, just observe it and notice it. So I'm thinking about the future, or I'm thinking about the past, and then just gently refocus your attention on the present moment again. So if you're listening to some kind of guided mindfulness exercise, whether it's with me or an app or a YouTube video, whatever that might be, you can just refocus on the person who's talking. But if you're out and about and you've gotten distracted, don't worry, just bring your mind back to whatever it was that you were focusing on in that present moment. So if you were noticing your sense of sound and you got distracted, you can say, oh, I got distracted, I was thinking about the future, I'm going to tune back into my sense of sound. And you can just kind of keep bringing your mind back in that way. Now, the awesome thing about doing this is that you actually build your resilience to having a wandering mind. So you get used to it. And what might have been frustrating at the start, I know it was very frustrating for me because I wanted to have the perfect mindfulness meditation practice right from the beginning. And I got very frustrated whenever my mind wandered. You start to realize that it's okay and it's totally normal for the mind to wander. But the other thing that happens as well when you do keep bringing your mind back is you're constantly improving your ability to focus and to keep attention on something. So every time that you bring your mind back, think of that as like, yes, I'm doing a really good job, rather than focusing on how many times you got distracted, because that honestly, it doesn't really matter. Cool. So I hope that you enjoyed that short mindfulness exercise and that you might enjoy implementing that into your own life. I'm just going to grab a quick sip of water, and then we are going to dive into some strategies for living more mindfully in your everyday life. All right, so the first strategy that I'd love to share with you is all about bookending your day with a mindfulness technique. So this might involve practicing a mindful breathing technique when you first wake up in the morning, or that mindful senses exercise that we just did. Just starting your day with something that's mindful is a wonderful way to get started with your day. And same thing with the end of the day. It can help you unwind. It can help you bring your mind into the present moment. It can help de-escalate stress. It can help you even switch off from the day that you've had and just become present before you fall asleep. So that's a really simple way to just start incorporating mindfulness into your day. And it doesn't have to be a long time. You don't need to practice mindfulness for 10 minutes or 20 minutes every morning and every night. If you take 5 mindful breaths in the morning and the night, that's a wonderful step. So again, we talked about mindful breathing a little bit earlier. So just paying attention to the breath as it moves in and out of the body. If you like, there's another simple way to practice mindful breathing, and that's simply labeling each inhale and exhale. So as you're lying in bed, maybe your eyes are closed, maybe you're nice and relaxed, you've just woken up in the morning, and you think, oh, that's right, I'm going to start with my day with some mindfulness. I'll do a mindful breathing technique. As you breathe in, just thinking the word inhaling, and as you breathe out, just thinking the word exhaling. So you're really just giving a label to that breathing cycle. That's another really helpful way to stop your mind from wandering too much, is just focusing on those 2 words. So it could be inhaling, exhaling, or breathing in, breathing out, whatever feels better for you. So that can be a simple practice to use in the morning and the nighttime if you'd like to. There are also some wonderful apps and things that you can use too. So Balance is a meditation app that I personally really enjoy using. So they've got 5 and 10-minute meditations. There's some mindfulness ones in there, some are relaxation as well. There's a bit of variety. So finding some kind of tool that can help you practice mindfulness can be another really helpful thing. Even something like listening to your favorite song first thing in the morning, really tuning into the instruments you can hear, the words that the person might be singing, just listening to that music and noticing how it makes you feel can be a wonderful way to help start your day. You might even have like a really upbeat and energizing and fun song to listen to in the morning, and a really nice, relaxing, calming, soothing song to listen to at nighttime to help you cultivate those different feelings that can help you either wake up or potentially fall asleep. In terms of resources as well, I did want to share a couple of different things that might be helpful. So there's a great book called The Stress Proof Brain by Melanie Greenberg. So if you're looking particularly to help manage stress, that can be a really wonderful one. And she actually talks about mindfulness quite a lot in that book as well. She actually says that out of all the different stress management techniques, that mindfulness for her is the one that she would choose if she had to pick just one to use. So that's really exciting. The Stress Proof Brain. Another that's really great is Lost Connections by Johan Hari. So in this book, he talks a lot about reconnecting with the values that are important to us as human beings. There's social connection, meaningful work, our intrinsic values. So a couple of different things. Again, he touches on mindfulness, but not too much. As just another really good one to use if you are interested in learning more about anxiety and depression and improving mental health in general. And then the last one that I've got 2 more, sorry. I've got The Happiness Trap by Dr. Russ Harris, which is the first, personal growth book that I ever read. And it's fantastic. It talks a lot about negative thoughts. So if you're struggling a lot with managing your thoughts, that's a really wonderful one to use. Again, he talks about mindfulness quite a lot in there as well, and how to incorporate it into your day. And then the last one is my book as well. My partner gets really upset when I do these kinds of things and I don't ever talk about my book. So it's called The Mindful Kind, and in there you'll find chapters about self-care, hobbies, physical health, sleep, going outside your comfort zone, lots of different things. So and obviously I talk about mindfulness quite a lot as well, and you'll find plenty more different techniques all written out step by step. So if you are wanting to find a mindfulness technique to incorporate into your day, just check the appendix in my book and you'll find a range that you can use. All right, so I've got a bit off topic there, but the first way to live more mindfully is to bookend your day with a mindfulness practice, so morning and nighttime. Now, another really helpful way to use mindfulness, and this is something that I personally do quite a lot myself, is to become used to noticing when you're feeling stressed and almost kind of using mindfulness as the thing that you do when you feel stressed. So, in the same way that if I'm feeling thirsty, I'll go and grab a glass of water, or if I'm feeling like, I got some dirt on me, I'll go have a shower. It's kind of the thing that you do in answer to whatever's happened. So for me, if I'm feeling stressed, I practice mindfulness. So maybe you've got a stressful email has landed in your inbox, or maybe you've gone down to the supermarket and you're just feeling a bit stressed out. I know for me, crowds and being around lots of people is still one of my stress triggers. So maybe that's something for you. Whatever your stress trigger might be, if you notice that you're having some kind of stress response, try implementing a mindfulness practice. So again, that mindful breathing technique that we spoke about earlier and the different variations of that can be helpful. That's personally my go-to mindfulness practice, but there are other ones that you can use too. So a body scan is something that can be really helpful, where you notice just your feet, notice your legs, notice your knees, notice your upper legs. So you really just scan your attention through your body. That can help bring your attention back into the present moment, and de-escalate that experience of stress in some situations as well. Keeping in mind that stress is that normal physiological response to having perceived some kind of a threat. So it's absolutely okay if you're feeling stressed. Mindfulness can just be the thing that can help you navigate through that sometimes. Actually, speaking of that, it won't always be perfect. Even now, when I'm going through stressful situations, it's really difficult sometimes to practice mindfulness, to practice relaxation, to fall asleep at your normal time, and to have a good quality sleep. Like, these are all very normal things that can be difficult. It just takes practice, honestly. It's taken a few years before mindfulness has felt quite natural in times of stress and anxiety for me to use, and I think I'm still getting better at it. So please don't worry and don't beat yourself up if you feel stressed and you try to use a mindfulness technique and it doesn't go perfectly, or you find it a bit challenging. That is absolutely okay. What my advice would be in that situation is try to find one particular mindfulness practice or technique that resonates quite a lot with you and that you find really easy to use, and just focus on building that up as your practice, as your go-to practice. So for me, as I mentioned, mindful breathing is the one that I resonate quite a lot with, and I've practiced that a lot over the years, so that now it does feel very natural whenever I want to use it. Cool. So that was the second strategy for incorporating mindfulness into your life. Look out for those experiences where you think mindfulness would be really helpful, in particular stressful situations, because mindfulness can be really helpful then. So the last strategy that I thought I'd share about living more mindfully is actually being aware of the activities that you have in your daily life that already unfold naturally, quite mindfully for you. So I'll explain what I mean by that. For me, I love my indoor plants. You can probably see in the background, that's not even half of them. They're everywhere. For me, I love repotting my plants, getting my hands dirty in the soil, propagating things, watching them grow. For me, that's a very mindful activity. So if I can take a couple of plants outside, repot them and just potter around a little bit, I won't really be thinking about the past or the future. I'll be noticing what the water feels like when I'm pouring it into my plants, and that cold sensation, or I'll be noticing all the little new growths that I can find on my plant. And I think everyone has activities like this. We just don't necessarily realize that we're being mindful when we're doing them. But when we know that they are like our mindfulness activities, we can use those a little bit more in our everyday lives. So knitting can be another great one, mindful coloring, mindful playing with your dogs or your kids. If you've ever played with a pet, you've noticed maybe that like they'll bring the ball over to you and you throw it for them, and then you're very engaged in that present moment. So finding these little activities that you can sprinkle into your everyday life that actually, I guess they encourage you to practice mindfulness in quite a natural and organic way. Maybe it's cooking. That's another one that I really love doing. So noticing the flavors and the textures and creating dishes and looking at all the colors and making it look, pretty. And I don't know, there's just something about cooking that I really love. But again, you'll have your own activities that can be really helpful for you. Mindful eating, mindful drinking, like these are things that we do every day. Mindful showering, if you want to, you can stand under the water, feel the sensation of the water falling on your shoulders, noticing that warmth, noticing the smell of any products that you might use while you're in there. Like there are so many different ways that you can implement mindfulness into your life. And that's just one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it, and why I mentioned right back at the start of this webinar that you don't have to necessarily set aside a whole lot of time in order to practice mindfulness. You can really incorporate it into your natural everyday things. Maybe that's even having a conversation with a loved one, really letting go of distractions, being present, being open-minded, paying attention to them. These are wonderful ways that you can practice mindfulness in your everyday life that are really quite meaningful and can create these benefits for us as well. If we're being mindful and mindfully listening with our partner or our loved one, we can create those stronger, more authentic, genuine relationships. And that's something that I've noticed in my own life too. So the options are endless when it comes to implementing mindfulness into your life. It's really just about experimenting and finding what works well for you. Maybe you love formal mindfulness meditations and you would like to sit down for 10 or 20 minutes every day and tune into your breath, or use some kind of guided mindfulness audio exercise, or whatever that might look like. Maybe you don't want to do that at all. Maybe you just want to do mindful coloring and mindful gardening and mindful cooking and these wonderful activities, or maybe even a blend of both, which is what I tend to do. So yeah, we are getting towards the end now. Those are the 3 strategies that I wanted to share with you about mindful living. So again, I'll just quickly recap back over those. So the first one, bookend your day with a mindfulness technique. The second one was use mindfulness in stressful situations, or whenever you feel like you're a bit overwhelmed, even if it's another emotion like jealousy or anger or sadness, you can come back to that mindfulness practice, notice how you feel in that moment, or use some kind of other mindfulness technique that helps you feel a bit calmer and gives you a clearer perspective. And then the third strategy was finding those quite organic, natural mindfulness activities and just making sure that you are incorporating those into your life in a consistent way. Okay, so I'm going to grab another quick glass of water. And then I just super quickly, I'm just going to check on the time. I just super quickly wanted to talk about mindfulness and nature just for a minute before we dive into the Q&A session. I did notice a couple of questions had come through, so I'm really excited to dive into those. All right. So I really wanted to touch on mindfulness and nature because the wonderful Outdoors Inc. have kindly, brought me in here to talk to you guys about that. So I wanted to talk about specifically why mindfulness can be such a wonderful thing when you're spending time in nature. So there's been a lot of research specifically that has explained the benefits of spending time in nature. I was just reading one, I think last week, about how spending like 10 minutes in nature, either walking or even just sitting down, helped people feel more resilient and lowered experiences of stress and improved their moods. So after just 10 minutes of being in nature, some kind of a nature setting, either just walking or just sitting, it created these wonderful results. And I think that that's something so important to keep in mind in today's kind of busy modern lifestyles. We are inside a lot of the time, we're sedentary a lot of the time, we might be on public transport and in cars and then in offices, and we might not get that exposure to nature that can be really, really wonderful for our well-being. And I think just spending 10 minutes in nature, if it can have that effect, and we're doing that on an almost daily basis, that's a really wonderful thing. But the thing that I love about kind of blending mindfulness and nature together is I think it just enhances that effect. So you're spending time in nature, but let's imagine you're thinking about a project, a deadline at work that's coming up, and you're feeling quite stressed and anxious and you're not really being present. You're out in nature, which is great, but you're thinking about something else entirely. Whereas if you can start to practice mindfulness in that precious time that you do have when you're in nature, I think you can boost those wonderful benefits of being in nature. So having less stress, improving your mood, being more resilient. I think it kind of just enhances that experience. So maybe you're just sitting in a park somewhere and you notice the feeling of the sunshine on your skin. You just notice that warmth and it feels nice. Or maybe you're looking up at the clouds and you're just watching them slowly moving across the sky. Or maybe you're looking down at the grass and you can see like little ants all crawling through it. And there's all these rich moments in our everyday lives that we can so easily miss out on when we're distracted by thoughts about the past or the future. But when we actually bring ourselves into the present moment, there's so much that we can experience, and these wonderful little moments that might seem like nothing, but for me, the more I've practiced mindfulness, and especially when I'm out in nature, the more they've felt really meaningful and special to me. Like being able to sit outside and just watch the birds kind of coming down into the grass and just playing around and making sounds. Like it sounds like it's not really anything, but it's such a wonderful moment in my day, especially if I'm dealing with a lot of work stress or I've got a lot of things going on in my life. Those really simple moments can just be wonderful. So they're just a wonderful part of life. So I just wanted to share that quickly before we dive into the Q&A session. Being mindful in nature is an incredible practice. And if you can incorporate that into your life on a regular basis, I think you might be the better off for it. I know I absolutely have, that's for sure. All right, so that was the end of this little mindfulness workshop webinar, but thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for being here. I do think we have some questions to dive into. Once again, if you're interested in learning a bit more about mindfulness, my book is called The Mindful Kind and my podcast is called The Mindful Kind as well. So you can find that on Spotify or iTunes, or just head over to my website as well. You can find my blog and my podcast and everything there. So my website is rachaelkable.com. And that's RACHAEL and then KABLE. You can go for a bit of an explore and find anything that you need in there. All right, and just say hello as well. I'd love to know if you were here today, shoot me an email or say hello on Instagram or Facebook or wherever. I'd love to say hello and to say thank you for joining us today. And once again, make sure you go and check out Outdoors Inc. as well for some wonderful programs to help you actually get outside in nature and make some wonderful social connections as well. So I'm going to hand it back over to Cal and just see if we've got some questions coming through. I don't know, are you happy to ask me some questions, Cal, or would you like me just to check these myself? Oh, you're on mute still.
I had to do that at least once today, like just part of being on a Zoom call. No, I'm happy to ask the questions to you, and we've had a few come through, which has been great. Claire's asked, what were the different practices that fell underneath meditation? You've listed a few, and mindfulness.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, great question. So there's lots of different types of meditations. Just a couple off the top of my head. There was visualization. So that's a type of meditation technique where you might close your eyes and imagine yourself being at the beach. You might hear kind of the waves crashing in and listen to all the different sounds that you can hear. The reason why this isn't mindful is because it's not actually your present moment. It's not really your reality. You're visualizing something, which is still a wonderful practice. Like all these different types of meditation techniques can be fantastic. And I've implemented and experimented with them all, and I think they are all helpful. So visualization was one. I think I mentioned as well relaxation breathing techniques. So for example, when you start to control your breathing, it's not necessarily mindful anymore because, again, you're changing your reality. But these breathing techniques can be really helpful. So, for example, there's the 4-7-8 breathing technique where you breathe in for 4 counts, you hold your breath for 7 counts, and then you exhale for 8 counts. And that can be a really wonderful way to help slow down a stress response as well. Even just the breathing waltz, which is something when I learned when I was volunteering on the helpline at the Anxiety Recovery Centre, which is breathing in for 3 counts, holding for 3 counts, and then breathing out for 3 counts. So there's quite a lot of different ones that you can use there. Yeah, there's quite a few different types of meditation. So You can even do things like flotation experiences where you go and you have all your senses deprived and you lie in this kind of pot of salted water. You just float in there. I've done that a couple of times. It was a bit strange the first time, but I actually quite enjoyed it towards the end. Yin yoga, there's the movement exercise, meditations, they're wonderful as well. I love especially doing yin yoga at the end of a long day and just stretching out my muscles and just noticing those feelings. So there's kind of the mindful movement elements of meditation as well. Yeah, there's lots of different ones.
That's great. Thank you. We've got a question from Alan. If you find yourself breathing through your mouth, should you revert to breathing through your nose?
If you can, if it feels really unnatural for you and you do need to breathe through your mouth, then you can do that. I think ideally in a lot of situations, if you can breathe in through your nose and out through your nose, that can be helpful, but even breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth as well. So that's something that I've definitely used. And again, this is another one of those kind of relaxation breathing techniques. If you take a breath in through your nose and then purse your lips kind of like you're blowing through a straw, and then you exhale really nice and long and you go like, so that's a kind of a relaxation breathing technique as well. I've just lost track of what the question was, but I hope that was...
You've already answered it. You did well.
Yeah,
okay. So Carol has asked if we'll be sending this podcast or recording to everyone so you can share it with others. And yes, of course we will. This has been recorded. So I will upload this to YouTube this afternoon, and I will send everyone who has registered for this event a link to that video, and you can share it with friends and family, anyone who you think might benefit from Rachel's great session. James has asked, what technique can you use to stop being reactive and being a bit more mechanical when dealing with emotions?
Sorry, I missed the first part of that question. Would you mind just...
So what techniques can you use to stop being reactive and to start being a bit more mechanical when dealing with emotions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, when I'm dealing with those quite stressful situations, this is going to sound really counterintuitive, but tuning into however you're feeling can be a really wonderful way to navigate this. So for example, let's say, I've received an unkind email and I'm quite stressed about it. I got some negative feedback from my boss and I'm feeling pretty angry, and I just want to kind of like write back straight away and have a bit of a go. What I could do in that situation is actually take a step back and notice how I'm feeling. Okay, yep, I'm feeling really angry in this moment. I'm feeling quite reactive. Yeah, I can actually feel like my heart's racing faster. I feel like I'm getting a bit red. I'm a bit flushed. Sometimes being able to acknowledge how you're feeling is a really important part of moving forward and processing that emotion. When we suppress emotions and don't get a chance to deal with them, they can manifest in other ways, and that can increase anxiety, it can increase depression. There's lots of things that can happen when you are regularly suppressing your emotions and ignoring them. So if you can, try and find a nice safe space where you can acknowledge the emotion, notice how it's feeling in your body, give yourself a little bit of space just to say, yes, I am feeling like this right now, and it's tough, give yourself a bit of compassion. It's been a couple of anxious weeks for me in particular, and every day I've been just taking some time to notice, like, yeah, okay, I'm still feeling really anxious right now. Like, I can feel my heart's racing a bit faster. I've been breathing more shallowly. I'm just going to take a couple of deep breaths. This is the other magical thing that can happen. Not magical, it's actually like really useful, beneficial. When you notice how you're feeling, you get to make a really conscious decision about how you want to move forward and deal with that feeling. So for me, feeling anxious, I'm like, okay, I'm going to use more of my relaxation breathing techniques throughout the day. I'm going to chat with someone who's really supportive so I can have a bit of a vent. I'm going to keep writing in my journal to get those feelings out. Like, you can really decide how you actually want to move forward and handle your emotion. If you've got a negative email from your boss, you take a step back, you say, I'm feeling really angry. Maybe the best thing for me right now is to go for a walk around the block, and then I'll come back to it and I'll answer the email in a really polite and respectful way. and that's how I want to move forward. So whatever you decide, I think practicing mindful awareness of your emotions can just give you that space to figure out how you want to move forward. That was a great question, by the way.
Great answer too. Nice work. And so I think that kind of brings us to the end of our time. So big thank you to you, Rachael, for putting this on today. You've done a great job hosting. I know I learned a bunch of things, and hopefully other people have too. Some of the comments in the chat are so supportive and positive. So that's really great from everyone. So thank you for participating. And remember that our programs at Outdoors, they kick off again next week. So if you or someone you know might benefit from our programs, then please get in touch. We would love to get you involved. And if you are already signed up, then hopefully we'll be seeing you soon. It'll be great to get the programs up and going again. If you do want to get in touch with us, then you can do that by phone or email or visiting our website. So I'll run out our phone number, which is 9417 2111. And our website is outdoorsinc, all one word, .org.au. And you can find everything you need to know about Outdoors and our programs. So thank you all so much for joining us. Hopefully you enjoyed the webinar. And yeah, we'll bring it to a close there. So thanks for spending time with us. Great. See you later.
See you later, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.